Yesterday, the Tampa Bay Rays tied a Major League record for consecutive wins to start a season by winning their first 13 games to start the year with a perfect 13-0 record. Should they win tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays and start the season 14-0, they'll hold the all-time record, breaking the tie between the 1982 Atlanta Braves and the 1987 Milwaukee Brewers. That 1987 Brewers season was bizarre to say the very least, and perhaps they hold the distinction for most volatile team in the history of Major League Baseball. Entering that season, the team was in a bit of a funk. After a World Series appearance in 1982, the Brewers have yet to return to the playoffs, enduring losing seasons in each of the previous 3 years. Despite the losing, Milwaukee had a number of great players on the team. 2 future Hall of Famers, Robin Yount and Paul Molitor, were staples in the lineup, as was outfielder Rob Deere. Those 3 hitters were the only ones in the Brewers lineup in 1986 to post an OPS above 750. The rotation featured the American League Cy Young runner-up in 86, lefty Teddy Higuera, who went 20-11 with a 2.79 ERA and 156 adjusted ERA across nearly 250 innings pitched that year. The bullpen in 1986 featured 2 key relievers, Mark Clear, who saved 16 games and recorded a 2.20 ERA and 199 adjusted ERA across nearly 75 innings pitched, and rookie Dan Plesac. He saved 14 games with a 2.97 ERA and 147 adjusted ERA across 91 innings pitched. Entering 1987, the Brewers also called up their top prospect, B.J. Surhoff, the number 1 overall pick of the 1985 draft. He immediately slotted in as the everyday catcher for Milwaukee once the season started. In addition to Surhoff, the Brewers also saw a new face full-time as the manager. Veteran manager George Bamberger retired at the end of the 86 season, prompting bench coach Tom Trellohorn to take over the role full-time for 1987. A number of great players, the number 1 pick in the draft, and a new manager was what Milwaukee branded for 1987, and as you already know, they had the greatest start to a season in baseball history. On April 15th, in a game in Baltimore against the Orioles, the Brewers were 8-0, bidding to become just the 5th American League team ever to start the season 9-0. Starter Juan Nieves, who had allowed 6 earned runs in his previous start, promptly threw a no-hitter to extend the winning streak. It was the first no-hitter in Brewers history, the only one until 2021, and the only one of Nieves' career. 3 games later, on April 19th, the Brewers were tied with the 1981 Oakland Athletics for the longest winning streak to start a season in American League history and had a chance for the all-time league record. All they had to do was beat a struggling 1-10 Texas Rangers team. Unfortunately, the Brewers found themselves down 4-1 entering the bottom of the 9th, 3 outs away from the streak ending. However, in Brewers fashion, they rallied back. After a single and a walk, Rob Deere hit a game-tying 3-run home run to knot the game at 4 apiece. 3 batters later, with 2 outs in the inning and a runner on first, light-hitting shortstop Dale Swaim hit a walk-off 2-run home run to win the ballgame. A 5-run ninth for Milwaukee to capture the all-time American League record. 1 day later, they tied the all-time Major League record, an impeccable 13-0 start. Alas, that winning streak was eventually snapped, but the team still played well. After their first loss, the Brewers won 4 in a row to start 17-1, the American League record for most wins to start a season with only 1 loss. Everything was going right for Milwaukee, they just kept winning. On May 2nd, in a game against the Seattle Mariners, the Brewers, just as they did 2 weeks prior, scored 5 runs in the 9th to erase a 4-1 deficit and win 6-4. That was the overtone of the team so far. Nobody could stop them. After that May 2nd game, the Brewers were 20-3, 5 games ahead of the Yankees for first place in the American League East. 1 month into the season, they scored the most runs in all of Major League Baseball and had the best run differential at +42. Why do I mention May 2nd in particular? Well, following that 20-3 start, the Brewers lost 12 games in a row. The Milwaukee Brewers, who were not 2 weeks removed from the greatest start to a season in baseball history, erased all of that with a disastrous 12-game losing streak. It was the first and only time a team has ever won and lost 12 consecutive games in a single season, and the Brewers accomplished that feat before Memorial Day. During that latter streak, Milwaukee was shut out 3 times, scoring just 25 runs, roughly 2 runs per game. The Brewers went from 5 games up in the standings to 3 games back and in 3rd place. They went from having scored the most runs in all of Major League Baseball to scoring the 13th most out of 26 teams. Their plus 42 run differential from 2 weeks prior had dwindled to a -5 mark. It's perhaps the greatest turnaround a team has ever had in the history of the sport. They might have started red hot, but their regression was what seemingly was to come and would presumably be how they would play the rest of the season. After all, Milwaukee was coming off 3 consecutive losing records and made almost 0 notable roster changes during the offseason. So who would expect this team to be one of the best in baseball, right? Well, not so fast. On July 8th, the Brewers lost to the Seattle Mariners to drop to a 40-41 record. What seemed impossible at one point, the Brewers succumbed to a losing record and entered the All-Star break with a 42-43 record. For those keeping track, that's a 29-43 record following that 13-0 start, the 3rd worst record among all 26 teams during that time frame. At the time of the All-Star break, the Brewers fell once again in the standings to 11 games out of 1st place, the 16th best record in Major League Baseball, and a lowly -41 run differential, the 3rd worst in the American League. It's actually kind of impressive how a team can start historically great only to fall so hard over the next few months. Given their 29-43 stretch entering the break, how bad did Milwaukee continue to play, you might ask? Well, the Brewers got hot again, winning 15 of their next 23 games to pull back within 6.5 games of the division. Paul Molitor, who came back from another DL stint after the All-Star break, sparked an unprecedented streak for the club, hitting in 39 consecutive games. As of April 2023, it's the 7th longest hitting streak in MLB history and was the longest hitting streak in the American League since Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak in 1941. From July 16th to August 25th, Molitor had 192 plate appearances, slashing .415 with a .495 on base and .683 slugging for a 1.178 OPS. He hit 7 home runs, drove in 33 RBIs, and stole 15 bases. His unbelievable 5-week run sparked life in the Brewers, and they pulled themselves out from the dead. In a stretch in mid-August, Milwaukee went 11-3, winning 4 straight games by 1 run in that streak, gaining ground on the American League East Division. Entering September, the Brewers were 70-60, boasting a +8 run differential and back 8 games in the American League East Division. A tall ladder to climb, but they had the opportunity to retake that lead as they had many games against teams ahead of them in the standings. The Brewers went on an incredible run to start the month, going 9-4 in the first 2 weeks, which includes taking 3 of 4 against both the Toronto Blue Jays and Detroit Tigers, 2 teams that were ahead of them in the division. After that start, Milwaukee was 79-64, a tight 6.5 games out of first with 19 left to play. Could the Brewers really pull off the miracle? They went from the pinnacle of historic baseball to a lowly, awful playing team when summer came along, only for them to come roaring back from a depleted state to stay in line for the division. The Brewers finished the season going 12-7 to end with a 91-71 record. However, it wasn't good enough as they finished in 3rd place, 7 games out of first, and missed the playoffs. A solid 91 wins, but that record alone doesn't tell the whole story. As of 2023, they're one of 2 teams ever to start a season 13-0 and start 20-3 overall, then proceeded to lose 12 consecutive games and go 22-40 overall entering the All-Star break following that 20-3 start to drop below 500 and seemingly lose out on any hope and potential they built up during the first month. Then, from the depths of the standings, reversed their first half misfortune and went 49-28 in the second half of the season to make a playoff run that came up just short. That 49-28 record in the second half was the second best in all of Major League Baseball, only 1 game behind the Detroit Tigers. Imagine at the end of April telling a Brewers fan that the team would have the second best record in baseball in the second half. They would think the Brewers would have ran away with the division. This is the most volatile season an MLB team has ever had. There has never been another instance of this magnitude where a team was that dominant, then so terrible, then terrific again. The 1987 Brewers will forever be an anomaly in Major League Baseball history.